It's been the cornerstone policy of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign.
We will not be conquered. We will reclaim our sovereignty.
A mission to deport millions of undocumented migrants living in the United States.
The largest deportation
in the history of our country.
History of the United States, American history.
A promise that's landing with his base. Mass deportations now signs prominent at this year's RNC, but one that's heavy on rhetoric and light on specifics. Former President Trump saying at an Arizona rally he wants to hire 10,000 new border agents.
We need the agents.
But details thin on how they'd carry out what would be the largest and most logistically complicated immigration operation in our country's history. One group estimating such a mass deportation operation could end up costing $88 billion per year. That's more than 10 times ICE's annual budget. A former Trump administration Border Patrol chief and ICE director telling us the plan would require an unprecedented beefing up of personnel and resources to increase deportations to potentially millions in a matter of months. The recent peak was 1.5 million removals and expulsions in fiscal year 2022.
They would have to scale up in significant ways. You would have to give them more hands, more feet, more capability.
Mr. Trump's similar promises in 2016 didn't materialize, now saying he'd look for help from local officials and law enforcement.
It's going to be the local police are going to turn them over.
The big problem is law enforcement is already stretched thin.
That's what Aurora, Colorado's police chief told me. His city has become a main focus of Trump's rhetoric. And while the chief admits Aurora is facing an influx of migrants and the challenges that come with them, adding mass deportations to their list of responsibilities could be overwhelming.
Would that be a good usage of Aurora Police Department resources in your view? Is that something you can take on?
Again, law enforcement has now taken on the brunt of responsibility on social issues such as homelessness, on substance abuse, on a lot of different things.
And hundreds of thousands of migrants live in so-called sanctuary cities that likely wouldn't want anything to do with this plan. The former president also telling Time magazine he's considering using the military. But federal law bars the military from being deployed against civilians, regardless of immigration status. It's possible that talking so tough and disrupting enough lives could cause many migrants to self-deport.
I think some of those people, given an opportunity to return home, to go be with their family, to be repatriated in certain locations, would take that opportunity.
A decision that immigration activist Alba Jaramillo says would lead to families being torn apart.
They'll self-elect to separate, but not because they want to, because they really have no choice.
Mr. Trump, talking to me back in August, was vague on how he'd make sure that didn't happen.
Will you separate families to get to those goals?
Provisions will be made, but we have to get the criminals out.
Despite labeling many migrants as criminals, the data tells a different story. An NBC News review earlier this year found overall crime levels dropping in cities that received the most migrants. And a recent report from the DOJ's National Institute of Justice, analyzing data from Texas, found that undocumented immigrants are arrested at less than half the rate of native-born citizens for violent and drug crimes. Still, voters trust Trump on immigration more. But the Harris campaign has pointed to Trump and his allies killing the bipartisan border security bill earlier this year. There also may be voters like the daughter of this undocumented immigrant who asked us not to reveal her identity due to her immigration status, who could counterbalance Trump's appeal to his base.
Your daughter, who's an American citizen, your daughter's going to vote in this election. How much will this issue be front of mind for her?
As someone who can cast her vote and has that right to, she will vote to support me as a mother and to support other families that are in the same situation.
And Jaramillo tells me mass deportation could lead to economic chaos around the country.
Our food is cultivated by our immigrant communities. Our houses are built by immigrants. Should we lose those contributions, our economy would completely fall apart.
A cost Team Trump dismisses. Whether they can execute on it is another question.
And Garrett Haake is joining us now. Okay, so as you laid out there, a lot of questions about how this would actually happen. But the bottom line is, if Donald Trump wins a second term, it would not be impossible.
No, it's not impossible. It's logistically incredibly complex. The only president who's even tried something like this before was Dwight Eisenhower, and that was quite a long time ago. Trump has a political issue here, too, though, because he wants the credit for saying he will do the biggest operation ever, the biggest mass deportation ever, but he doesn't necessarily want the blame for explaining exactly how that would work. One of the things that activist told me is you're basically talking about separating families in all 50 states. There's no way to do that cleanly. There's no way to do that without disrupting the lives of millions upon millions of Americans. That's an inconvenient detail for Trump. It can be done, but the how is extraordinarily important here.
There's a potential, as you lay out, that human cost. There's also the actual financial cost here, because you would all but certainly need Congress to help. And we don't know, is Congress, who will hold the balance, who will hold the power in either chamber of Congress? That's
right. This is another issue on which Trump sort of fudges the details by trying to kick this to local law enforcement. That's another way to put down the federal bill for this. But somebody has to pay the local cops, too. And as my interview with the Aurora police chief indicated, they don't want this responsibility. They need immigrant communities to talk to them, to catch dangerous criminals. If you are, every time you roll up into one of these neighborhoods, worried that you're going to knock on somebody's door and pull somebody out, that's a problem, too. A divided Congress, this is shut down city. I mean, we had House Democrats and Trump shutting down the government over a wall. Imagine over deporting tens of millions of people.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.